Hi everybody. Whoever said money can't buy happiness was definitely not talking about climate finance. Hi, my name is Anubha Bhonsle and you're watching a fresh new episode of The Climate Explainer. For the last 10 weeks, we have talked about all the things that can be done to slow down and adapt to climate change, whether it's by countries or by companies or you and I. Now, today I want to talk about what it all comes down to, and that's money. Climate finance refers to the funding and support that developed countries provide or are called to provide to help developing nations, including India, address the challenge of climate change. It aims to help Global South countries foot that hefty bill of transitioning to cleaner, sustainable, and climate-resilient development paths. So, for example, buying carbon capture technologies to absorb all that excess CO2 emissions and store them away from the atmosphere. That technology is super expensive. Now, from a Global South perspective, climate finance is vital for achieving net zero goals. Countries like India argue that they have contributed relatively less to the historical greenhouse gas emissions, but they actually bear a disproportionate burden of its impacts. I'm going to urge you to watch our episode on climate equity, where we explain the politics of this in detail. But for today, let me just say this much. Climate finance acknowledges this historical injustice and aims to redress the balance. So, developed countries, historically the largest emitters of greenhouse gases, are expected to provide financial support to developing nations. Think of it like an ecological debt. That's easier said than done though. Disagreements often arise on the scale and delivery of climate finance. So developing countries are going to argue that the commitments that were made by developed countries actually fall short of what is needed to address the scale of climate challenges. For instance, in 2009, developed countries pledged to mobilize $100 billion per year to assist developing countries in their climate efforts. Everyone agreed that it was a fraction of what's needed. But mind you, that target has not even been met once, and it expires in 2025. Countries are working to negotiate a new target already, but the crux is simply this. Number one, the numbers are inadequate and everyone agrees. Number two, the progress is super slow. Number three, distributing and accessing climate finance is often cumbersome, it's buried in red tape, and it's often influenced by geopolitical interests and power dynamics between countries. Now, this can lead to delays in funds either reaching the intended recipients or being directed towards projects where they are going to have the most significant impact. Countries, including India, are emphasizing for greater transparency, greater accountability in the disbursement of these funds. They also want a say really in how this money is going to be used. So Global South wants climate finance to support projects that promote sustainable development, for instance, that encourage low carbon technologies as the second. Now they want the money to deal with what are urgent climate impacts that they're already facing in their homes, but instead a significant chunk of climate finance is earmarked for cutting down fossil fuel emissions, which developing countries say is the responsibility of developed countries first. Another important aspect is simply capacity building in these recipient countries. What do I mean when I say that? Well, many developing nations actually lack the necessary expertise and institutional frameworks to effectively utilize the climate finance that they get. So remember, just getting money is not enough. technical assistance and knowledge transfer becomes extremely crucial to ensuring efficient implementation. If climate-related loans are not carefully managed, they could add to the burden of existing national debts, potentially hindering the country's economic growth and its overall stability. A recurring demand of the Global South is that they are owed these as grants and not loans, which need to be repaid. So, net-net, climate finance is critical for climate action and justice, but it often becomes intertwined with a lot more. Broader climate negotiations, all that politics, conflicting interests of the various stakeholders. I'm going to stop here. Think of this as a primer on climate finance. It is a far more broad-based and intersectional conversation. We definitely think it's time to have it. The team here at NDTV is prepping for many more episodes of the Climate Explainers, and we want to know what actually matters to you. So if you're watching this on TV, recommend us to a friend. And if you're accessing this on the NDTV website or any of the social platforms, just drop a comment. We're reading them all.